Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. All right, y'all, I know it is late. I'm still Delegate Michelle Guyton from District 42 in Baltimore County. This one will be shorter, at least on my end, than the other one, but this is an exciting bill that brings together two things I love: playgrounds and children's development. So this is another bill that I don't think has been attempted yet in the state of Maryland. That doesn't mean we can't pass it first year. Is everybody, if you need to get up and stretch, as long as you listen, you can stay. That would be awesome. I totally get it. What this bill does, 1147, is that I'm asking for a favorable report. It bans installation of materials that contain dangerous levels of lead and PFAS from use on public playground surfaces. Okay. So basically we call this the No More Toxic Playgrounds bill, because currently our playgrounds are very bad for children. I'm not going, and the environment. So I'm not going to try to convince you and give you all the data for why PFAS and lead shouldn't be on children's hands or in their mouth, because I think that you're all smart enough to understand that. I do have two fabulous witnesses that are going to testify to the environmental effects of these two substances and to the developmental effects, but I'm also happy to add any information to that you need. So I want to let you know that we will have, in honor of Delegate Stewart, a very hopefully kumbaya moment at the end of this hearing, where those folks that are on your list unfavorable, my understanding, are going to say that they are no longer unfavorable, except for one I haven't spoken to. So for all of these reasons, and because we need to do better for our children in Maryland, and now we have the opportunity to do it, I ask for a favorable report on House Bill 1147. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Laura Stewart. I'm here representing Free State PTA. And we represent over 70,000 volunteer members in over 500 public schools. House Bill 1147 aligns with Free State PTA's legislative agenda, which includes support for reducing exposure to known harmful substances in playground surfaces, including lead and PFAS. HB 1147 limits exposure by prohibiting the installation, selling, and supplying of these substances that reach defined levels in the bill. Tire mulch, poured in place, and crumb rubber have all been found to contain these hazardous compounds. There are healthier, safer, more sustainable, less expensive alternatives, such as ADA-compliant engineered wood fiber. This bill protects our youngest, most vulnerable populations. Children are much more biologically and developmentally susceptible to harmful chemicals, even at low exposure levels, since their organs are still developing, and behaviors such as increased hand-to-mouth contact and crawling put them at greater risk of harmful exposures. I have been at playgrounds where tire shreds are exposed because of degradation of poured in place and other surface materials. Small children play on the ground and put the stray pieces in their mouth and collect dust on their clothes. Tire scrap is not a children's product. In fact, tire scrap is a potentially hazardous product and has even caught on fire on playgrounds, causing huge toxic plumes. This bill would reduce the potential for harm by requiring testing materials before they are installed. Montgomery County, DC, and Prince George's County have had to close playgrounds for high concentrations of lead and rubberized surfacing on the very ground where babies crawl and toddlers roll. We know that no exposure to lead is safe for children, and multiple exposures in the environment can add to the risk of damage, including reduced IQ. Free State PTA understands that students need healthy brains and healthy bodies in order to be ready to learn, and therefore we strongly urge you to give this bill a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. And there's a number of virtual favorable witnesses. Should we take them before questions? Are they all with you?
Yes.
Okay. Well, let's bring up Gianfranco Cesario, Environmental Working Group. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Gianfranco Cesario, and I'm an environmental attorney with the Environmental Working Group. I would like to express EWG's strong support for this bill to keep toxic chemicals out of playgrounds. EWG has spent over 30 years investigating the health impacts of toxic chemicals such as PFAS and lead and advocating for better protection. PFAS are known as forever chemicals because they build up inside the human body and do not break down in the environment. Studies have found that 99% of Americans have PFAS in their bodies. PFAS chemicals have been linked to a variety of serious health impacts, even at small doses. For example, PFAS have been linked to cancer, reproductive and developmental harm, hormone disruption, increased cholesterol, and decreased immune response in children. Children are especially vulnerable to the risks of PFAS pollution due to factors including lower body weight, developing organ systems, and longer lifespans during which toxic effects may manifest. Children's breathing space is also closer to the ground, making them more vulnerable to PFAS and playground surfacing. PFAS are found in a wide range of consumer and commercial products, and efforts like this bill to phase out these forever chemicals are urgently needed to protect our children from lifelong health risks. The risks of lead exposure are also serious and well documented. Lead is a potent neurotoxin that is particularly dangerous to children with the potential to cause long-term harm. Lead can cause brain damage, slow growth and development, and lead to learning and behavioral problems. According to the CDC, there is no safe lead exposure level for children. In recent years, studies have found actionable levels of lead in the same type of playground material that contains PFAS. This bill will importantly address this problem. Playgrounds are no place for toxic chemicals. EWG reiterates its strong support for this bill and urges a favorable report from committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's bring up Hannah Donart, Montgomery County Council of PTA's Health and Wellness Committee. Please go ahead.
Good evening. So as chair of Montgomery County Council of Parent Teacher Association's Health and Wellness Committee, I'm providing testimony in support of HB 1147. I strongly urge the Maryland State Legislature to prohibit playground surfaces materials containing hazardous chemicals such as lead and PFAS. Our youngest, most vulnerable populations have a right to a healthy, safe environment. I have listed authoritative resources and evidence, and scientific evidence in my written testimony supporting taking a proactive preventative approach that's evidence-based. In addition to that, and what our other fellow speakers have just mentioned, I also wanted to highlight personal account of advocacy effort in my hometown, Poolesville, Maryland. 2 years ago, the town of Poolesville, Maryland began replacing wood chips with shredded tire mulch in our playgrounds locally. Being an environmental health scientist and mom, I began advocating for a ban on this material and replacement with engineered wood fiber as soon as I realized it was being installed. I reached out to local parks and street board and commissioners to raise awareness, advocating alongside fellow environmental health scientists and parents for a safer solution for our children and community. Shortly after launching my advocacy efforts, there was a playground fire. The tires burned hotter and faster than wood and unnecessarily exposed our first responders and community to hazardous burning tire mulch. Additionally, 2 months after the playground fire, water testing results found PFAS in a well nearest to the site where the playground fire took place. Banning sources of PFAS contamination, such as shredded tire mulch poured in place and shredded chrome tire rubber, is critical since it's very costly and difficult to remove this forever chemical from our drinking water and soil. PFAS, otherwise known as the forever chemical, are linked to irreversible health and environmental impacts that we're learning a lot about now and should not be downcycled where our children play. There are also many relevant common sense federal and Maryland local laws that I wanted to bring to your attention, including scrap tire law in Montgomery County, the 2015 Montgomery County Council unanimous resolution to ban tire crumb rubber using synthetic turf, and the Consumer Product Safety Commission's strict levels for lead content in accessible parts of all children's products, including playground equipment. And there's mounting evidence that the benefits of protecting children from harmful lead and PFAS exposures far outweigh the costs associated. I'll leave you with this.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. We're going to call Kathy Michaels, 1 Montgomery Green.
Hello, I'm Dr. Kathleen Michaels. Thank you for allowing me to speak in support of HB 1147 today on behalf of 1 Montgomery Green, a nonprofit dedicated to catalyzing the transition to a sustainable economy and facilitating environmental responsibility among businesses, residents, and government. I am a neuroscientist recently retired from NIH, where I conducted research and administered global public health research programs. I am also a veteran of the long and arduous campaign to eliminate neurotoxic lead from gasoline and consumer products. As a child and pregnant mother-to-be, I was the unfortunate recipient of the impact of the lack of regulation, and I am acutely aware of our responsibility to protect children from new health threats as they come along, including these synthetic play surfaces and the substances in them. Lead contaminates tires during use and is transmitted to children via playground surfacing. As you heard earlier today, there is no safe level of lead. History repeats. The federal government often lags the state and localities on regulating harmful substances or the materials containing them. In my day, for example, indoor tobacco smoking was regulated locally long before the federal government finally did. Polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons are a highly carcinogenic class of substances present in tires and most tightly regulated in Europe. In the USA, they are regulated by localities, including DC and Montgomery County, in asphalt sealants. And yet, children are not protected on playgrounds containing these very same class of substances. There are other sources of PAHs, particularly from combustion, but like lead and PFAS-laden materials, we should be eliminating them from children's play spaces, not doubling down on exposing children to them. PFAS made possible the production of huge amounts of synthetic carpeting, including plastic turf, and highlights the Pandora's box-like problem of these synthetic surfaces. Communities throughout Maryland have been misled by the hype surrounding plastic synthetic turf and tire waste products.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Michaels. Let's turn to Diana Conway from the Best District and Safe, Healthy Playing Fields.
Wow. Wow. What an introduction. Wow. What an introduction. So thank you. Thank you to Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, and honorable members who have made it through this far into a long day. I'm here to support Delegate Guyton's HB 1147 to limit toxic content of lead, PFAS, and PAH. I'm Diana Conway. I'm president of Safe Healthy Playing Fields, a national all-volunteer 501c3 nonprofit. And we work to inform communities and policymakers on the multiple harms created by plastic synthetic playing surfaces, including playgrounds. This bill will not derail any planned playgrounds because there are plenty of ADA compliant natural surface materials that are commercially proven. My written testimony is loaded with links to articles, journals, and studies, as well as some fun photos. I hope you will take a look at it for a taste of just how bad the toxic load is for these surfaces, especially PAH. 1147 will protect our most vulnerable community members, children who face decades of further exposure ahead of them. So let's not front load them. The majority of synthetic playgrounds include poured-in-place PIP, typically made of waste tires. Here's a statement from the Mount Sinai School of Medicine's Children's Environmental Health Department, one of just 10 members of a federal pediatric environmental health specialty unit. Quote, given the hazards associated with recycled tire rubber, it is our recommendation that these products never be used as surfaces where children play. That's based on years, decades of unrebutted evidence on carcinogens, heavy metals, endocrine disruptors in tires, as well as now the contribution of microplastic contamination. Those of us who have dealt with little kids know they do love to put their hands in their mouths, their toys in their mouths, their fingers up their noses, their fingers up their friends' noses. Not a good place for tire waste, not a good place for tire dust. SHPFI urges a favorable report for 1147. Let's quit front loading our kids with PFAS, lead, and PAH. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Megan Stallard, MCPS Student Climate Action Council.
Good evening, Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, and committee members. My name is Megan Stallard, and I'm a freshman at Poolesville High School in Montgomery County, Maryland. I'm also an at-large council member of the inaugural MCPS Student Climate Action Council, sanctioned by the Board of Education to support student sustainability projects and advise the board on sustainability issues. This testimony is not on behalf of the SCAC. However, as a student leader and environmental advocate, I strongly urge a favorable report on this bill. There is no doubt about it. Evidence consistently demonstrates that tire crumb playgrounds are dangerous. They increase the risk of cancer in young children tenfold. They worsen asthma and cardiovascular disease. They contain up to 7,000 parts per million of lead, 70 times the limit of 100 parts per million of lead content on children's products. Tire crumb playgrounds are children's products, so why aren't we regulating them that way? Furthermore, tire crumb is not only dangerous in the context of human health, but also environmentally. NIH has already performed ecotoxicity experiments that reveal that tire crumbs create substantial hazards for aquatic and terrestrial plants and small organisms due to its heavy metal content. This is a major environmental concern. You have heard many testimonies today in favor of this bill. Most of them likely have cited the same facts that I have, but I want to leave you with a reminder that these numbers of lead contamination, cancer risk, and environmental harm represent something much larger than pure statistics. The lack of regulation on hazardous tire crumb rubber material is a danger to the children of this state. It is their future that you fight for every day as a Maryland representative. So let's do what is best to protect Maryland. I strongly urge a favorable report on HB 1147. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Great job, Megan. Our first question is Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Delegate. This obviously protecting children from these toxic substances is really important. I wondered if you wanted to address the fiscal note. MDE apparently they say they need an environmental compliance specialist, a vehicle for the compliance specialist, and laboratory services. Have you spoken to them? And is there any way to make sure the provisions in this bill are enforced without having an environmental specialist drive all over the state to test playgrounds?
Thank you so much for that question, Delegate Ruth. I have not spoken, well, I have spoken with them about this bill. Actually, the levels that you see in the bill primarily came from MDE. So they've been in contact with me about the bill. I was surprised to see the fiscal note yesterday that included a new car. And the fact that I've just never seen that on a fiscal note before, perhaps it does happen. And the fact that they need someone full-time in order to start this program, but then apparently after a few years, they do not believe they need someone full-time anymore. But I suppose at that point they keep the car, so it kind of evens out. But I don't really have I was hoping somebody might be here to answer that question and to see if perhaps they would be willing to get it under the $100,000 by not buying a car or just making a half-time position, but we haven't had that conversation directly.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Lehman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you so much, Delegate Guyton, for your leadership on this. I'm a little familiar with the topic and this great group of advocates you put together. My question's a little bit similar to Delegate Ruth, so I did not see the fiscal note, but I was wondering whether there would be a scenario under which MDE could delegate enforcement authority to local government, since playgrounds are like 90, probably 8% of them are local projects, right? In municipalities and counties, the only state playgrounds I know of come under DNR. So did you contemplate that, or is that something you'd be open to?
Thank you. Thank you for that. I think that is a really interesting suggestion. And that might be a great question to also ask MACO when they come up. We have worked with MACO and Municipal League to get them over on our side on this bill. I took the mechanism for enforcement almost directly from the George Walter Taylor Act that we had passed a few years ago, that required the certification from the producer, and that it could just be required that they would produce it. And then if somebody complained and they had to go test it, they could. I would not necessarily be opposed to what you're suggesting, as long as they aren't. So I think that's a conversation that if you are all interested as a committee in making that change, we could certainly have with the locals.
Absolutely. And then one other quick question, since you brought up the certification, I didn't see it in the bill. Is there any fee associated with that? It seems to me there should be, because that's something MDE definitely has to, oversee, that they will administer that certification that is required of the manufacturers.
So no, there is not a fee for the certification. That is a manufacturer or installer in this case, basically certification that they can verify that
They're just
these-
providing paper records.
Correct. This isn't
Okay.
something that Maryland Department would have to actually do anything with unless there was a
Okay.
complaint or reason to, to spot check.
Okay, so there's not necessarily an opportunity to recover any money.
Sure. And also this is not this is a prospective bill. It's not a retrospective bill. So there's
Right.
some concern in the fiscal note about that, which might be, and in the policy note that I'm asking people to rip up their current playgrounds. I am not. It would make me happy if they have crumb rubber that they replace that. But according to this legislation, they do not have to do this. This is going forward, new contracts, right? So even if they're contracted now and they've got it going, they don't have to change that. But new contracts after the effective date would then have to be certified that they do not include these toxic chemicals.
Okay, great. Thank you. I saw it was retrospective. So I mean, forward,
Right.
prospective. Thank you. Thank you for that answer.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Delegate.
Delegate Morgan.
So real quick question. You don't want to use, I guess I use the word tire and rubber anymore. Do you have any idea what the cost of the new aggregate would cost compared to tire and rubber? So, because it's the burden here obviously falls on the counties. So when you look at the fiscal note, it really is meaningless to the effect that all the counties have to put out. So do you have any idea what the number would be?
Sure. That's a really good question. And I think maybe Laura might have an idea of the difference in the amount, but we are not necessarily banning poured rubber. I think in this bill, we are banning chips. There's no way to have rubber chips and rubber mulch the way it has been used on a playground and have it be safe. My understanding from talking to everyone involved in this is that we're not necessarily banning the actual poured rubber, but we are banning it if it hasn't been properly sealed or, as was testified, if it degrades to the point that it's not taken care of and children can eat it.
I'd just like to point out that in the past, both Prince George's and Montgomery County actually tested some surfaces that were not crumb rubber, but they were other materials that degraded, and they actually failed their own tests for lead, and they closed them and remediated. So I think that that's the kind of thing, going forward that we could hopefully avoid. But Hannah,
Yeah, Hannah
Could-
Denard looks like she has a response to the delegate's
Yes.
question. Please go ahead.
Yes, so Toxic Use Reduction Institute has a chart that's in my testimony, my written testimony. There's a link to it, and they have a side-by-side comparison of the life cycle costs, just costs, and then also the environmental and the health and all of that. But there's two charts in there, and one of them has the cost. And engineered wood fiber and wood chips is the most sustainable, safest, ADA accessible for engineered wood fiber, and is the lowest cost from the beginning to end in life cycle for installation, for maintenance, and for removal. It's free for removal. You have to pay for all those other materials to be removed because they're hazardous waste. So just wanted to point that out in my written testimony that that's there.
Thank you.
Delegate Healy.
I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I missed the beginning of your presentation, but I had a bill hearing in appropriations. But I want to know, does this also affect like school playgrounds as well?
Yes, it does affect school playgrounds primarily. It doesn't affect, so our backyard playgrounds would not.
No,
would-
I understand
yeah.
the ones in the parks and all that. I figured it would be.
Correct, publicly funded playgrounds. We actually had to, there had not been much work done on playgrounds at all in the state of Maryland. We actually had to go in and define what a playground was. We had started at the very bottom with this bill. So yes, we are under my intent with this bill, and I believe the way it's written is that it would affect all publicly funded playgrounds, and that would include schools.
And so it would be just public schools. It wouldn't be like playgrounds on at daycare centers or private schools or whatever.
Under that definition, but if you wanted to expand it, it would be terrific with me.
Thank you.
Delegate Naraki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate, just two questions. What about private playgrounds? Like I'm thinking about like Annie's Playground. Are you familiar with that one in Hartford County? Would it impact that in any way?
It wouldn't because it's already laid, but if it were to be, renovated, then is it publicly funded? Then it would. If it's not publicly funded, then it would not.
Okay.
That's.
And then when you say renovated, is there,
Mhm.
what's the threshold? Like how significant of a renovation is it that then all of a sudden that becomes a part of the conversation there?
Right. So we wrote in the bill that it needed to be a significant enough renovation that, and also at the end of the expected lifespan of the product. So we're not asking someone to tear it up next year, but if it has an expected lifespan of 5 years or 10 years, whatever it is, and we get to that point and it needs to be replaced, it needs to be replaced with something that's not poisonous to children.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you so much. So I'm a little confused about the current process before I lay a pour flooring for a playground, or in this case, use rubber chips. And so currently it is certified as okay to be laid. I'm missing the point about like why we're here and why this bill and kind of what happened, as briefly as you can, because I know it's late. But
Absolutely.
I'm
No, thank you. And I would absolutely want you to understand, currently there's no certification. They can put anything on the playground they want to.
Okay, but then you've also made a distinction between what is poured versus rubber chips. And as I'm understanding, we're trying to ban the rubber chips.
We're not
versus
trying.
what is.
Sure. We're not trying to ban any particular substance. We're trying to ban anything that tests with lead or PFAS. And there are ways to keep poured rubber surfaces from not doing that.
Okay,
but
so
people
then
have to do it correctly.
So I guess what has happened where something has happened or something's come back where X amount of playgrounds or just this playground was tested with lead, and what are the potential other factors? In this case, for instance, lead getting into these products, especially because with rubber, things are washed and cleaned and all these type of things. So just help me briefly understand.
Sure. Do you want to handle that one, Laura? Because you spoke to the fire and you also spoke to the testing in the site.
Sure. And I have experts online also that they can come in. So what happens is that, so this bill bans the substances, the harmful substances, not the actual form factor,
I
right?
understand that, but I'm
So-
understanding how we've gotten to the point where we
Yes.
know that there are these substances
Yes,
in here,
right.
and 20, 50, 100 playgrounds were tested and we have been finding these substances. That's
Yes.
where I'm trying to get to.
So what happens is, Diana
wants to
could,
speak to this.
everyone wants to speak, but just really quick, they can speak more completely. But when you do a test right, so the tire shredded up, right? It's shredded up and like the metal's taken out, and then sometimes it's coated in something and it's thrown out onto the field. So there's spikes in lead. It's not even throughout every piece, but if you pick the right pieces, you will get us what we've seen is there will be a spike of lead in particular pieces. And I will go ahead and who wants to?
I think it's just one person.
Delegate, and we can't have 4 people answering the
Yes.
question. We have 2
Sure.
subjects. So do you want?
Diana,
one
do you
person
want
on the
to
line?
do that?
Sure. I'll just say
Delegate
that,
Guyton, Delegate Guyton, do you want to pick one person to
Thank
answer
you,
the question?
Delegate.
Hi, thank you. Sure, we'll go with Diana, and if you could speak specifically to testing and proof that these things are actually in playgrounds now, I think that's what Vice Chair is getting at.
Thank you. And yes, I totally agree. And it's a very important question. So the reason we know this is because we've had experiences with this in Prince George's, Montgomery County, and DC over the last multiple years, which I'm excited to say are all linked in my written testimony. And these are, these are reputable third-party independent tests of the materials taken with a chain of custody from the playground to the testing lab to verify that these are materials that have extremely high but uneven levels of lead. So in my testimony, there's a single photograph of a single shred of lead, single shred of tire crumb from a playground that has multiple different levels of lead on it, because it's thousands of tractor tires and car tires all thrown in there together, all mixed in. So the idea is, if you can't have a uniform surface, you have to have a threshold. So in Montgomery County, there were 4 or 5 playgrounds that tested. In DC, there were 17, I think, at parks and public schools. And DC's government idea on how to get rid of lead was to power wash it. Well, where's that lead going? Oh, and then they're going to vacuum it. And so, I mean, this is not how you protect children. You don't protect children by washing it somewhere else. And the same thing happened in Prince George's County. There were multiple high levels of lead detected on playgrounds, but they were in sort of what's called hotspots. So this is not.
Diana, I'm going to cut you off because
Sure.
I want to quickly get to the point because it is late. But I'm wondering what happened to make someone start testing?
We got
So it-
some parents involved in DC and they started
Okay.
in DC. That's where the most
Like
surfaces.
somebody was sick, someone
Yeah,
ate
why
the
did we
rubber.
start testing to begin with? It looks like Kathleen might have a very short,
You
very
know,
quick
I will
answer.
ask,
Okay.
I will take this offline because it's getting late. I'll take this
Okay,
offline.
we
I
will,
wanna know
we will
how
be
this
in
started.
contact with, we need some data for the vice chair.
Great. Okay. Thank you all. We have some in-person unfavorable testimony from Dom Bochco or Christina Curley from the Maryland Association of Counties.
All right, thank you, Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, and members of the committee. I'm here today on behalf of Mako, particularly on Dom, as he is on our committee as of right now. As drafted, the Mako Legislative Committee did vote to oppose this bill as it would place an unfunded mandate on local governments. And while counties have concern with the current language of the bill, Mako would like to thank the sponsor for the willingness to engage in dialogue and find a common ground. And Mako is grateful for the sponsor for developing a series of amendments that would alleviate county oppositions and take care of any county of concerns. These amendments are in our written testimony specifically. We urge the committee to move forward with these amendments. However, as drafted, Mako does oppose this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mako? Okay, we have a piece of informational testimony virtual from Steve Miller from Wacomico County, if he's available. Not here.
Yes. Hello. Good evening. Yes, thank you, delegates, for your time tonight. I won't repeat what's been said, but I am a director of recreation and parks in Wacomico County. I also represent MacPro, which is the recreation and parks affiliate of Mako. So MacPro has not taken an official position on this, but we do support Mako's work with the delegate to make those amendments. We feel like those amendments, if adopted, would be very positive, and that includes the we appreciate that it's a prospective bill, that we wouldn't have to go backwards on it, so we do appreciate that. And also I think Mako suggested moving the date effective, moving that forward. So I think with those amendments, I think MacPro would not have any heartache over this. We want safe playgrounds like everybody else, so we appreciate everyone's work on this.
Any questions for this witness? Okay, that concludes the bill hearing on HB 1147.